Hello, welcome to Indie Tutorials. My name is Guillermo and I would like to thank the Patreon supporting this channel. Hello everyone, let's continue the housekeeping by refactoring some of the logic we have split regarding the input listeners in the character movement for the jump, horizontal move, vertical move, ORK framework input keys that are setting the character movement, and move all this input logic to our player input brain, where should be living it. So let's start by open up the character script to start moving up the jump state from here, because this is the only one that we are in the update method querying whether we are pressing the sprint jump button from ORK Framework or Machine ORK. So let's move this to the player input itself. What we need here, we have the character state jump with a public getter. So let's copy those. Control copy. Let's go to our player input brain and move on top. Let's make here a header attribute, and I will rename it to actions. Then let's fix this. Then let's paste our two variables like so, and I will also create a private character state current jump state, and I will explain for the reason for that later on. So the next step is to create here our update method. So let's find a good place to put this function, perhaps here. So it will be private void update, and then after having this update method we can go back to our character script and we can copy this if statement inside the update. Control copy, control paste, but I'm going to tweak it a little bit. So we first need to make sure that we actually have a character state jump. This is optional, of course. So let's check if our jump state is not null. Then we query this input from ORK Framework, but instead of try and set the state, I will actually add it to our if statement. So if we are pressing the sprint jump button and also the character state machine is able to set the jump state, then we can set our current jump state to the character state machine current state, like so. This is handy if we wanted to later on check whether we are still in the jump state to perform other logics. Okay, so now that we have this piece of code here in the player input brain, we can comment it out or delete it altogether. So this is the only thing running the update method. From here I'm going to also delete the character state jump and then go back to Unity, let it compile, select the player prefab, open up the player prefab, In the player game object, scroll down where we have now our player input brain asking us for the character state, the jump character state. If you have Animancer, sorry, not Animancer, but the inspector gadget plugin, it will be just a matter of select our states game object, drag it into the slot here, and it will show you to which state you want to select or to choose from. In this case is the jump state, of course. If you don't have that plugin, it's a little bit trickier, but I already explained how you could do it by just open another inspector tab and locking the tab with the state open to select the proper state here. So now that we have this state added to the player input brain, we can just play, or let's go to the scene view, the first place, and hit play. So we can start running, then sprinting, and we can perform the jump, and it works. So one out of the way, let's continue with the next one. Alright, so the next one is the horizontal move and vertical move input keys we have in the character movement script. So let's open up this script and let it load properly. So we have here a GameSlop Machinum input key asset for the horizontal and vertical move. So let's move up those two into our player input brain. So let's copy those, control copy, player input brain. Let's add a new header attribute and let's name it something like Machinum inputs and do a paste. Now if we go back to the character movement script, these inputs are being used in the handle movement right here. So we are populating this vector to move direction. If we do F12 to go to the declaration, we see that this is a private field and we have a getter here. So we need to convert this public getter into also a setter. So let's remove this section and let's add some color braces. Let's do a get. The get will return the private like we had it before, but then in the setter let's do a move direction dot x is going to be equal to value dot x, and move direction dot y is going to be equal to value dot y. So now that we have a proper public property, let's go to the player input brain. We have already our update method over here. After checking whether we have the jump state, we can add our movement logic. So let's do a character movement, movement direction is going to be equals to a new vector 2, and this vector 2 is going to be listening to our input keys. So let's copy those from the handle movement. These guys here. So first of all we have the X, and then we have the Y. I hope it's easy to follow like this, to avoid having to type everything back again. So we are building a new vector 2 out of the input that we are receiving from the ORK input keys. So we can save our script. Let's go back to the character movement and comment this out. I will also comment out the variables over here. Let's go back to Unity to let it compile. And if we go back to the prefab once again and scroll down, from the character movement our inputs are gone, but now we need to set it up in the player input brain. So let's find those. We have horizontal move and we had vertical move. There we go. Make sure to save the prefab and let's give it another test. Press Ctrl P to start play mode. And we can move. So mission accomplished, also using the WSD key, arrow keys as well, so it is working. Okay, so let's move on to the next one, which is the lock target. For the lock target we were listening to the pressing the tab key or the joystick to lock the target in the character movement, so we need to move also this input to the player input brain. So let's copy over this if statement. Let's copy everything. Then we can remove the excess. Player input. Here in the update method, we're still on the update. Let's click, paste this get button, get asset locked on target, and from here we can remove these update lock targets, but we can reuse the lock on target property that or variable that we have in the character movement. So let's do a character movement lock target, is equal to lock target or false lock target. This is to toggle the value. So after having that, this is all we needed to do here. So let's go back in this statement, and what we can do is remove this like so. We just leave the update lock targets because it will check whether we are locked on or not, and this is set in the player input brain. Okay, so save the changes and let's go back to Unity, let it compile once again, and let's Ctrl P to start play mode. And if we lock into Volund, we can see that the target lock is still working as we were expecting. Okay, so let's continue with the last one for today, which is the sprint key. So if we go back to the character movement script, we can see that we are checking whether the sprint key is still pressed or if it's not pressed anymore, so we can set this object variable sprint key to false. So let's move up this also to the player input brain. So let's select this block of code and do a Ctrl X to cut it out and move to the player input brain, and in the update method again we can paste it out. So we are checking whether the sprint key is released, and we need to find a way to handle this method here. So what we can do is to type gaming is love machinom maki game get object variables. We need to pass the variable ID. So we had this constant we made before, so we can do game constants, and we need to set the player object variable ID. Then after having this variable object, we can set by passing the key. So game constant, this is the sprint object variable key, and the value we want to set in this case is false. Let me put this in another line so it's better readable, and let's remove this one. I'm adding the whole the full namespace for learning purposes. Of course, we could just have this as a using statement in the header of the script, but let's keep it like this so we can both learn the API. Alright, so after doing this, we can go back to the character movement script. Let's remove all this section commented out, and also this one, which is already working. Keep it clean and tidy. What else? Okay, this was if we were not using root motion. We are using a 5 float for the movement speed. We can keep that one. Okay, let's go back to Unity and let's test it out. Once again, Ctrl P to start play mode. I'm going to select the player, the spawn player prefab here, and scroll down until we see the sprint checkbox. And what we can see, whether it's working or not, our refactoring method is if we press the sprint key and release it, the variable will change. So this is working as well. Okay, so on the next episode I will start doing a couple of things, perhaps building the equipment, the armor set, which is something I think nobody has covered before. I mean, changing actually the meshes of the armor, not just the hat or the sword or the shield. So that's something interesting to cover, and start building the AI for the enemies using behavior trees. Okay, so thank you for all the support you're giving to the channel, and click the subscribe button and the ring notifications if you want to receive whether we are having new videos. So see you on the next one. Thank you.